Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Dan and Amy, fresh off of his meeting with Kim Jong-un last week.
Oh, Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
Trump meets the rump.
New York Postism. Trump and the summit meeting with Kim Jong-un is back on, but it's going to be more of like an ice cream social.
Well, more of a meet and greet, kind of a rush. You know, when you rush each other to see if you like each other, to see if you're, want to be part of the club. But Kim Jong-un...
Cocktails, light hors d'oeuvres, not sit-down dinner.
Yeah, Kim and Melania Trump is not going with.
No dates.
No, yeah. Kim Jong-un has been courted heavily. I mean, he had the Russian foreign minister over at the DMZ.
Yeah, Lavrov, yeah.
Lavrov was there, and now I'm hearing President Assad is going to be meeting with him in the next few days.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Everyone wants a little piece of Kimmy, huh?
There's barely enough to go around. But for more on the summit being back on and what, if anything, productive is possible, we're pleased to be joined by Bill Gertz. He's senior editor for the Washington Free Beacon and author of the book I War, War and Peace in the Information Age. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, good to be on the show.
So, the gamesmanship of the summit being on, summit being off, summit being back on, notwithstanding, what are the possibilities here? I mean, is this going to be, is there any possibility of this to be Reagan and Gorbachev at Reykjavik, or should we calibrate our sights a little bit lower?
Yeah, I think the president telegraphed what was going to happen during his little chat with reporters before he headed off to Camp David on last Friday. And he basically said that they're looking at concluding the Korean War, which would be a significant step. As for denuclearization, the U.S. is holding fast to its position, which they're calling CVID, which is complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement. I don't see that happening just because of the nature of the North Korean regime, which is to keep the Kim family dynasty in power, and those nuclear weapons are the key guarantor. I don't think he's going to accept U.S. security guarantees.
Well, that's different than Trump said. Now maybe he's just trying to project a hopeful note, saying that he thought Kim Jong-un was interested in denuclearization.
Yeah, but he was then saying, he said, well, it may not happen all at once, and then it may happen over time. And to me, that's a trap, a negotiating trap by the North Koreans to get concessions, because what happened in the lead up to first the summit, then the summit being off, and now being on again, was that the U.S. made clear that it would not provide economic aid to North Korea until after denuclearization. Kim Jong-un then went and flew to Dalian, China, and met with Xi Jinping, and the word is that he was promised economic aid from the Chinese, and that's where you had this anti-U.S. sentiment coming out after that. So the Chinese were kind of subverting the summit, and I think the president expressed his concern about that. Then he canceled the summit, and then it appears that the North Koreans blinked and said, oh, yeah, we want to have a summit. But this issue of denuclearization is obviously the key thing.
Well, why would President Assad want to have a face-to-face meeting with Kim Jong-un?
Well, Kim's stock is high now because he's going to be, this is a little tiny half-communist country that's been accused of crimes against humanity for its human rights abuses, and he's going to meet with the most powerful leader in the democratic world. And so he's gaining a lot of credibility among the rogue regimes of the world, and that's why they're all jumping on the bandwagon to snuggle up to Kim Jong-un.
How does the trade negotiations between the U.S. and China, which have now ended without a settlement, there was some hope that there was going to get some kind of agreement to help prop up the Chinese telecom giant ZTE in exchange for lowering tariffs on American agricultural goods. That seems to be by the boards at present. Well, how does that factor into China's posture with North Korea vis-a-vis the U.S.?
Well, yeah, the Chinese are still back on their heels with the U.S. North Korean summit. They were aced out. The president made clear last year that it was up to China to deal with North Korea, and obviously they didn't. They've had a duplicitous policy of saying they support the U.S. while secretly supporting North Korea. And now the president's tightening up his trade issue with China and sent over this Wilbur Ross Commerce Department delegation and didn't get any solution. And now the Chinese are threatening trade retaliation if the U.S. goes ahead with its big tranche of tariffs on Chinese goods, which is supposed to happen this month, I guess.
And what about our steel tariffs? I mean, on our allies. We've got the EU, Mexico, Canada, saying that it's a security threat. Can you explain that?
Well, the Trump administration has linked economic security with national security, and I think this reflects the president's view that that trade and business are his key strengths in terms of his experience as a businessman. So that's kind of what he's advocating. He's kind of very much made U.S. fair trade a part of U.S. national security. So he's elevated that as a key priority. I mean, the National Security Council doesn't do economics, but we have this National Economic Council, and the White House people, Peter Navarro in particular, is a real hawk on China. He's kind of been driving the train on these tough U.S. Trump administration posture on foreign fair trade.
Some of the president's detractors, like former CIA Director John Brennan, are suggesting that Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans are outflanking Trump. They're manipulating him. It's bad for America's national security. Is Trump engaging with Jong-un unilaterally at all? Is that folly, or is this does this have the potential to be productive, even if not everything we would like from the North Koreans, like denuclearization?
Yeah, I do have concerns that they are making too many concessions. But on the other hand, I think it's important to at least try to have a meeting and have a direct talks with this rogue state leader. And there's no harm in holding talks as long as you don't make too many concessions. And that's really the danger, as I mentioned, that the U.S. could make too many dangers. I was a bit concerned by a tweet recently by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, where he said he was basically promoting the upcoming Singapore summit as saying, yes, the United States wants to see a strong, prosperous, and secure North Korea. I don't think that should be the U.S. policy at all. I mean, again, this is a horrible regime that has committed, literally, according to the UN Commission a couple of years ago, crimes against humanity in its treatment of its own people. So I don't know if we should be advocating for a strong North Korea.
And how are our South Korean allies responding to this on-again, off-again summit? And what trepidation do they have in terms of what may come from it?
Well, the current South Korean president, Moon Jae-in, is very conciliatory towards North Korea, not as much as others of his party in the past who have taken a very liberal approach in trying to basically an appeasement-oriented approach to try to develop closer ties with North Korea. But he has made some concessions. They've had a couple of meetings, and all the talks from South Korea are, let's try and give them aid. So there is concern that the South Koreans could disrupt this maximum pressure campaign, which the president has kind of backed off of now by offering North Korea aid in the future.
Now, President Clinton he's making all the rounds, because he's pushing a book, and he was upset that President Trump smiled with the North Korean top leader that was at the White House. He said, "You never smile to the North Koreans. You never give them that much power."
Well, Trump is not your average politician, and he does what he thinks is the best, and there's no book on what Donald Trump will do in his dealings. He comes at it from a completely different point of view, and a lot of people think that's a good thing. I mean, just obviously not the politics as usual kind of approach.
Yeah, right. I mean, the same people who had no problem with Obama genuflecting before Islamic theocrats. Bill Gertz, senior editor for the Washington Free Beacon, author of the book I War and Peace in the Information Age. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.